There's something quietly devastating about the gift of awareness. Most people move through life half asleep. They follow routines, chase desires, get upset about small things, celebrate the temporary, and then forget why they were ever sad or joyful in the first place. They live comfortably in the rhythm of habit, sheltered by the soft illusion that everything makes sense. But then there are the few who wake up. For reasons no one can quite explain, they begin to see through the surface of things. They notice the way people talk without meaning their words. They sense the loneliness behind laughter, the fear hiding inside ambition, the quiet despair behind a smile. They see how the world keeps spinning on stories we tell ourselves to survive. And once you see those stories for what they are, you can't unsee them. This is where the pain begins. Because awareness, contrary to what we are told, is not light at first. It is fire. It burns away illusion. It scorches everything false, including the parts of yourself that once found comfort in pretending. Have you ever noticed how children laugh so freely, how they throw themselves into life with total abandon? They haven't yet learned the full weight of seeing. Awareness comes later, quietly, then suddenly, like the slow dawning of a storm you didn't see forming. And with it comes a kind of ache that no amount of pleasure can soothe. It's not depression. It's not even sadness. It's the painful recognition that so much of what passes for life is simply noise, movement without depth, activity without meaning. When you become aware, you start noticing patterns that others miss. How people cling to certainty not because it's true, but because they're terrified of what lies beyond it. How they seek validation not because they need love, but because they've forgotten their own. How they chase distractions not to find joy, but to escape stillness. You begin to feel the heaviness of collective illusion, and it hurts. Because you realize how much of humanity's suffering is self-created. How wars are fought not for justice but for ego. How relationships fall apart not from a lack of love but from a lack of self-understanding. How people destroy themselves trying to become someone they were never meant to be. Awareness makes you see this, not intellectually, but viscerally. You feel it in your bones. And the more deeply you perceive, the more the world's contradictions pierce you. You start wondering, why can't others see what I see? Why does the truth feel like a wound instead of a blessing? Alan Watts once said, awakening is not an improvement, it's a dismantling of illusion. And that dismantling, that breaking apart of all that's false, is what hurts the most. Because in order to see clearly, you have to lose everything that kept you comfortable in blindness. You lose the easy belonging that comes from fitting in. You lose the blind joy that comes from simple ignorance. You lose the false safety of believing that everything has a clear purpose or reason. And in their place comes uncertainty, vast, silent, unanswerable. This is what separates the aware from the unaware, not intelligence, not morality, but the willingness to feel the full spectrum of existence, even when it hurts. To see both beauty and suffering as two sides of the same coin. To understand that joy without sorrow is hollow, that peace without struggle is dead. The aware person is not cynical. They are not broken. They are simply raw, stripped of comforting illusions. They feel more, not because they want to, but because they can't help it. It's the price of consciousness. You can't awaken halfway. Once the curtain is pulled back, you see the machinery of human existence running endlessly, the ambitions, the fears, the pretending, and you begin to question whether it's possible to ever go back. You can't. And that's where many people get lost. They mistake awareness for suffering because they stop in the middle of awakening, when the illusions have crumbled, but the truth hasn't yet revealed its peace. It's like being caught between worlds. Too awake to live like before, too human to detach completely. The most aware people carry this strange ache, a silent sorrow that has nothing to do with their personal lives. It's the sorrow of seeing humanity chasing shadows and calling it progress. They can sit in a crowded room and feel the emotional static humming beneath every conversation. They can sense the unspoken pain that people spend their whole lives avoiding. And so, they often retreat. Not because they dislike people, but because they feel too much of them. They crave solitude not as escape, but as recovery. Solitude becomes the only place where their perception doesn't feel like a wound. But here lies the paradox. The same awareness that isolates them also connects them to everything. The same vision that burns them also enlightens them. The same pain that breaks them also opens them to compassion. This is why awareness and pain are inseparable twins, because the heart that sees truth must also bear the weight of it. You cannot perceive the depth of existence without feeling its fragility. You cannot understand life without mourning what's lost in every moment. And yet, buried within that ache is the seed of transcendence, the possibility that pain itself is the doorway to wisdom. The first truth about awareness is this: pain is not a mistake. It is the friction between illusion and reality, the tearing sound of a mask coming undone. The moment you begin to see, truly see, you start colliding with everything that others glide past. What once looked smooth and seamless now reveals cracks, tension, pretense. You see how fragile it all is, how much of what people call normal life is actually a delicate balancing act between fear and denial. And when you stop playing the game, when you stop pretending not to see, the world doesn't thank you for it. It punishes you. Because your awareness exposes what others have agreed to ignore. And nothing unsettles people more than the mirror of truth held too close to their faces. This is why the most aware people often become outcasts, not in the dramatic sense of exile, but in the quiet loneliness of being unseen. They speak a language few understand. They live in a reality that doesn't quite fit into conversation. They can no longer find comfort in small talk, or in dreams that revolve around status, money, or control. Their perception stretches beyond the surface, and that expansion makes ordinary life feel unbearably thin. You see, most people don't actually want truth. They want comfort, and truth often dismantles it. Awareness, therefore, becomes an act of rebellion, not because you set out to defy society, but because clarity itself disrupts its illusions. Alan Watts once said, "To awaken, you must let go of the need to control the dream." But letting go hurts. Because the dream is what you thought life was. It's not just that you lose illusions about the world, you lose illusions about yourself. You realize how many of your desires were borrowed. How much of your identity was built to please others. How many of your beliefs were never yours to begin with. Awareness dismantles the scaffolding of the false self, and that collapse feels like death. The ego, terrified of its own disappearance, calls it suffering. But in truth, it's rebirth. The pain of awakening is the pain of being born again, without anesthesia. You are stripped naked before existence, without the layers that once protected you from its immensity. You begin to see that joy and sorrow are not opposites but partners. Every genuine moment of love carries grief inside it, because love reveals impermanence. Every moment of clarity carries weight, because to see beauty clearly is to also see its fragility. The most aware people are not depressed, they are simply intimate with reality. They have learned to feel the pulse of life without filters. But here's the paradox: the deeper your awareness, the more pain you can hold, and the more peace you can eventually experience. Because peace is not the absence of pain, it is the mastery of it. Think of awareness like the ocean. Most people live on the surface, tossed by waves, blinded by glittering reflections. The aware person dives deeper. The descent is frightening. It grows darker, colder, heavier. But as they go deeper, the chaos above fades. The noise quiets. What remains is silence, vast, still, infinite. That silence is not empty, it's full of truth. But you have to survive the descent first. You have to let the shallow air of illusion leave your lungs before you can breathe freely underwater. And that's where most people turn back. The darkness frightens them. The weight of awareness feels unbearable. They try to swim back to the surface, to the noise, the comfort, the pretending. But those who endure, those who keep going down, find something extraordinary waiting in the deep, serenity. It's the same serenity you see in the eyes of old souls, monks, sages, people who've suffered deeply but no longer resist life. They have accepted the paradox that awareness brings, to feel everything, yet be attached to nothing. This doesn't mean they stop feeling pain. It means they stop being afraid of it. Pain ceases to be an enemy. It becomes a teacher, sharp, precise, unrelenting, but honest. It strips away all the unnecessary layers until only the essential remains. Most people fear pain because they think it means something is wrong. But for the aware, pain simply means something real is happening. Growth is happening. Awakening is happening. And through that realization, pain slowly transforms from suffering into clarity. When you stop running from discomfort, it begins to reveal its meaning. It's like holding a burning coal not to hurt yourself, but to understand the nature of fire. Once you know it, you don't fear it, you respect it. So, awareness teaches you not to escape your pain but to expand enough to contain it. Like a vessel learning to hold more water without breaking. Like a sky that welcomes both storm and sunlight. Because the purpose of awareness is not to make life easier, it's to make life truer. And that truth, though it cuts, is what ultimately sets you free. The most aware people feel the deepest pain because they have stopped numbing themselves. They have stopped pretending. They have stopped running. And when you stop running, everything you've been avoiding catches up to you. But once it does, once you face it, it loses its power. You discover that awareness doesn't hurt you, resistance does. It's your clinging to illusion that burns, not the light itself. Awareness is the fire that purifies. Pain is simply the sound of falsehood burning away. And if you can endure that sound, if you can let it burn without flinching, what remains is not suffering, but understanding. Because when illusion dies, truth is born. There comes a point when the pain of awareness changes its nature. At first, it feels like punishment, as though the universe singled you out for a special kind of suffering. You ask, why do I feel everything so intensely? Why can't I just be normal? But over time, you begin to see that the pain isn't there to destroy you. It's there to refine you. The universe doesn't give awareness as a curse. It gives it as a calling, a sacred invitation to see clearly, to live truthfully, to love deeply. But to accept that invitation, you must pass through the fire. Because clarity demands sacrifice. To see truthfully, you must give up comfort. To love honestly, you must surrender pride. To live freely, you must die to illusion. And this is why awareness feels like pain, because it's a process of shedding. You shed false identities. You shed outdated desires. You shed the need to be understood. You shed the comforting lies that made life easier to bear. Like a snake losing its old skin, you peel away what no longer fits, what no longer feels true. And though the process is natural, it still stings. Alan Watts once compared awakening to peeling an onion, layer after layer, tear after tear, until you reach the center, and there's nothing left but raw existence. That rawness is what most people fear. They avoid silence because silence reveals their truth. They avoid stillness because stillness exposes the noise within. They avoid awareness because awareness dismantles everything that's unreal. But if you can stay, if you can sit inside that discomfort long enough, something miraculous begins to happen. The same awareness that once felt like a wound begins to open into peace. It's not the shallow peace of distraction or the fragile calm of control. It's a deeper peace, one that doesn't depend on conditions. You stop trying to fix the world because you finally understand, the world doesn't need fixing. It needs seeing. And the act of truly seeing, without judgment, without resistance, is the healing. Because the moment you stop trying to force life into your image of how it should be, you begin to experience it as it truly is, raw, wild, imperfect, alive. You realize that pain is not the enemy, avoidance is. That suffering isn't caused by what happens, but by your refusal to let it happen. And that acceptance, far from being weakness, is the highest form of strength. There's a quiet power that emerges when you stop fighting reality. It's not resignation, it's understanding. You learn to hold pain the way the ocean holds storms, vast enough to let them pass through without losing its depth. The most aware people learn this balance. How to feel deeply without drowning. How to love fiercely without attachment. How to see clearly without despair. It's the art of carrying fire without burning your hands. But this balance doesn't come from closing yourself off. It comes from opening even wider, so wide that nothing can harm you because you no longer resist it. Pain cannot destroy what accepts it. Suffering cannot persist where there is full presence. Awareness, when complete, becomes compassion. Because the moment you stop judging pain, your own or others, you begin to understand its purpose. You see that everyone is doing their best with the level of consciousness they have. You see that people who cause pain are not evil, they're asleep. You see that the world's cruelty is not deliberate, it's unconscious. And when you see that, judgment turns into empathy. Anger turns into understanding. Distance turns into connection. This is the hidden reward of awareness, you become soft again. Not weak, but open. Not naive, but kind. The more you see, the less you condemn. The more you understand, the less you fear. And that's when awareness stops hurting, not because life gets easier, but because your heart grows larger than the pain. The Stoics understood this centuries before. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The most aware souls rediscover that truth in their own way. They stop trying to control life and start participating in it. They stop resisting emotion and start letting it flow through them like wine through an open field. And in that flow, pain loses its sting. It becomes sensation, nothing more, nothing less. The storm still comes, but it no longer shakes you. Because you've stopped being the tree clinging to the earth, you've become the sky that holds the storm. In that vastness, even heartbreak becomes sacred. Because you see it for what it truly is, the universe breaking open your heart so it can fit more love inside. Awareness deepens until pain and beauty become indistinguishable. The tears you once feared become prayers. The silence you once avoided becomes home. And the world, though still imperfect, becomes radiant, because you no longer need it to be otherwise. That's the quiet paradox of awakening. It begins in agony and ends in awe. It starts with fire and ends in light. And the most aware people, the ones who have felt the deepest pain, are the very same who eventually feel the deepest peace. Because they have walked through hell and discovered it was never separate from heaven. They have died to illusion and been reborn into truth. They have stopped running and started being. And when you finally reach that point, when you stop needing life to make sense and simply let it unfold, awareness ceases to be suffering. It becomes wisdom. It becomes love. At the end of awakening, there is silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of understanding. It's the kind of stillness that comes when you stop trying to change the rhythm of the universe and simply begin to dance with it. The most aware people, those who have felt the deepest pain, eventually reach this quiet horizon. They stop asking why life hurts and start listening to what pain has been trying to say all along. Because awareness is not the end of suffering, it's the transformation of it. You realize that pain is not a punishment for seeing too clearly, it's the purification that allows you to see completely. It cleanses perception, burns away illusion, and leaves only what's true. And what's true is this. Nothing is missing. Nothing was ever wrong. Everything, even the pain, was part of the unfolding. When that realization sinks in, something softens inside you. You stop resisting the chaos. You stop arguing with reality. You stop trying to control outcomes that were never yours to control. You become like a river, fluid, alive, in motion, unafraid of where it leads. Alan Watts often compared life to music. He said, "We thought of life as a journey, like a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end. But the point of music is the music itself. The most aware people eventually rediscover that truth. They stop trying to reach some spiritual destination. They understand that the purpose of awareness is not to escape the world, but to live within it, more deeply, more openly, more honestly. They no longer need to fix everything they see, or heal everyone they meet. They understand that life doesn't need their intervention, it needs their participation. They become witnesses, not passive, but profoundly present. They walk through the world like clear mirrors, reflecting truth wherever they go, but no longer trying to hold it. That's the freedom of awareness, to see everything, but carry nothing. It's what the Stoics called tranquil strength. A calm that isn't the absence of emotion but the mastery of it. To feel everything, and still remain still. To know that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. To stand in the fire and not be burned. You begin to see that every soul is walking its own path toward understanding, some slowly, some painfully, some not at all. And that's okay. Because you no longer need the world to wake up for you to rest in peace. Your peace no longer depends on agreement, validation, or belonging. It depends only on your willingness to stay awake, even when it hurts. And paradoxically, the moment you stop resisting pain, it transforms into compassion. You start seeing pain everywhere, in strangers, in lovers, in enemies, and instead of recoiling, you begin to feel tenderness. Because now you know, they suffer because they do not see. And you once didn't see either. So, you forgive. You understand. You let them be. That is what real awareness looks like, not superiority, but humility. Not detachment, but deep connection. Not escape, but embrace. You realize that to be human is to feel everything, and to be awake is to stop running from any of it. Pain is no longer something to avoid, it's something to honor. Because every ache is proof that your heart is still open, that your awareness is still alive. And once you see this clearly, life becomes simple again, not easy, but simple. You laugh more. You cry more. You love without expectation. You grieve without despair. You live with the full spectrum of experience, and you no longer apologize for your depth. Because you've understood the truth that all wise souls eventually learn. To feel deeply is not a flaw, it's the highest form of intelligence. The universe does not break you because it hates you. It breaks you because it's trying to open you, wide enough to hold it all. And once you've been broken open enough times, awareness no longer feels like pain. It feels like expansion. It feels like light. It feels like peace that doesn't depend on anything going your way. That is the gift hidden inside the curse. The pain of awareness refines the soul until only truth remains. And when the illusions finally fall away, when you stop needing to be understood, validated, or healed, you find something you never expected. Freedom. Not the loud, triumphant kind of freedom the ego desires, but the quiet kind that lives in acceptance. Freedom to see clearly without despair. Freedom to love deeply without fear. Freedom to live awake in a world that still sleeps. And when you meet another awake soul, one who has walked through their own fire, there is no need for words. You simply recognize them. You see in their eyes the same peace you found through pain. You both smile, because you know. You've both learned the same truth. That pain and awareness are not enemies, they are allies. That suffering is not punishment, it's initiation. That awakening is not escape, it's participation. And that the deepest pain was never there to wound you, but to prepare you for the kind of love that can hold the entire world. So, if you find yourself feeling too much, seeing too deeply, hurting without reason, remember this. You are not broken. You are becoming whole. You are simply awake in a world that mostly dreams. And though the path is lonely, it's sacred. Because at the end of it, when all illusions fall away, what remains is not darkness, but light. The same light that burned you is the light that frees you. And in that stillness, that silence, you will finally understand why the most aware people feel the deepest pain. Because they were chosen to turn that pain into understanding. And that understanding into love. That is the destiny of the awakened. That is the cost of seeing clearly. That is the beauty of awareness itself.